All right. All right. I think we are ready to get started. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Sarah, are you able to confirm? Or if somebody can type in the chat and the notes here, that would be great too. Yes. Okay, great. It's always fun talking, and you can't really get audio feedback. I'm much more of an audio feedback than a texting or messaging feedback in these sessions, but we'll make it work. So if anyone has any questions, you can always put them in the chat, and I'll try to stay on top of them as much as possible. So welcome to the session today. My name is Gary Drenikoski, and I'm a managing director with SpearMC Consulting. This session today is the road to Kibana. Learn how Parkview Hospital and others are paving their way to data visualizations in 2022. So this session really will focus a lot on Kibana and the ways that customers are using Kibana, because there's a lot of different use cases. So we'll walk through all of that today. Again, my name is Gary Drenikoski. I'm based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My contact information is there. So if anybody has any questions after this session, please feel free to reach out. Always available. I mean, that's my cell phone number. It's not a, voicemail number at our office. So if someone needs to get a hold of me, I've made it pretty easy. Hopefully everyone here has heard of SpearMC, and we do a lot with the various conferences, but we are an Oracle partner and we specialize in PeopleSoft, right? So anything PeopleSoft is, SpearMC. We've been recognized through Gartner for some of our work, as well as through Oracle's different partner network channels. But whether it's consulting, training, hosting, managed services, testing, that's all really our areas of focus. And you'll see that on display really on this next slide, which is all the various sessions we have. So I know as we get down through the sessions, we're more than halfway through, but we've had a lot of sessions, some really good sessions throughout the week. So what I put up here is in Central Time. So if anybody wants to attend any of the sessions later today or tomorrow, note that these are in Central Time, but go back and review some of our sessions if you are interested in any of these topics. All right, so enough about us and SpearMC. What you guys really want to hear about is Kibana. So before we jump into Kibana too deep, I would like to talk a little bit about the various reporting tools that are available with PeopleSoft. So the first tool here is Query. And Query and SQR, actually I say the first two, Query and SQR. These are foundational reporting tools. These have been around since the beginning of PeopleSoft. So hopefully everybody in this room has at least heard of Query or SQR, and I'm sure you've ran quite a few of those in your lifetime, or even written quite a few. And the reason I list all these tools out is because I want you to get a nice picture of all the tools available and what they're meant for, right? Or what they're really good at. Maybe not necessarily what they're meant for. I mean, I guess whether you're good at something meant for it, it's one and the same. But what I guess the point I'm making is, Query, you're not going to get a bunch of nice visualizations like we're going to see in Kibana, but it's really good, for end users to create something quick and get some data, right? So that's why I highlight, that item in green as kind of the best option for functionality. So going further, right, SQR, very similar, this tool is built for processing large amounts of data, built for speed. You can do data manipulation. It's not just reporting, it's in real time, but the visualizations and things like that aren't, something you're going to find in the tools as we go further down the line to the right. Next, we have what we call conventional reporting tools. This would be Envision and BI Publisher. So Envision, not necessarily built for large sets of data. I think the greens at the bottom of the Envision are really where that tool shines, right? So all of our friends that are accountants, very familiar with Envision, in particular, that last row, data integration with Excel, right? You're able to actually interact with data in Excel through Envision. BI Publisher, that tool is also, an opportunity to really start visualizing some data, right? So you could do a little bit more formatting, but I think, as you think of BI Publisher, it's a lot of focused reporting on particular subject areas, but, or formatted reporting. If you're using forms, remember prior to BI Publisher really being that tool, you might have had Crystal Reports or some other tool. Now, those are our traditional and foundational tools. Let's move on to analytical tools, pivot grids. So pivot grids was a tool that came by a few years ago. Very good for providing, a different visual look to your data. So, but kind of one-off graphs, not great though when it came to large sets of data or built for speed. I think pivot grids did a really good job with notifications. Again, very good when you're focused on a particular data set. The ease of use, I think for an end user, I mean, I get an argument sometimes on that. Is that really a yellow or should that be a red? So that is, another one of those, debatable right here. This is sort of my view here, right? This, discussing it with customers and colleagues, as well as just, my experience over the past, 20 years of doing PeopleSoft. So pivot grids, then we get to Kibana, right? And that's really what this course is all about. So Kibana, excellent large data sets, excellent built for speed, right? So you're not actually hitting the database, your Kibana runs against the Elasticsearch indexes. Notifications, I would say Kibana is not a tool really for notifications. Kibana is really meant for dashboarding and data interaction. So if you view a tile on a PeopleSoft page as a notification, well, then maybe you could say that's a yellow, but it's not really meant to send out alerts and other types of notifications. It's meant for, on screen in your business process directly within PeopleSoft. And that is why I made that a red. Advanced visualization, yes. I mean, there are 18 different types of visualizations within Kibana. So we'll talk about some of those as we open up the application. Ease of use, and that, as an end user using Kibana, in my opinion, is very easy. There's a small learning curve at the beginning, a little bit with the filtering. How do I turn those off? How do I back out after I've drilled down some of those things? But again, it's easy to use. It's just, hey, this is how you do it, and then you move on, right? And so I don't think, that is anything other than agreeing from an end user perspective. Real-time data. So that is the one, if you notice, all the other tools, they're all green for real-time data. Kibana is only real-time if you are on 859 and you're using delivered indexes that are turned on for real-time indexing. So though it's not all indexes could be real-time, only some can be real-time. You can get near real-time for custom indexes as well as indexes that are not enabled for real-time indexing. And that's, based on how frequently you run your crawl process for your Elasticsearch framework for your indexes themselves. End user creation, I make that a yellow. And it's probably because in my view, that runs from a green to a red, right? So end user creation, if you have a power user and they have the ability to create something in Kibana, that's actually very easy. You can click with, 8 clicks and press save, and you'd have a visualization that you couldn't even do with any of these other tools. But there are reasons that there are factors that have to be in place to make it that simple. You need to have, data in an Elasticsearch index that's available already, but once it's there, that's very easy. So that would be a green. If you go on the opposite side, if the data that you want to report on is not available in an index, then you need to get it into an index. Maybe that index existed in PeopleSoft, but you didn't have it crawled and deployed. You simply need to turn that on, make it available in Kibana, and then you could start building an index there. That would be a yellow. Or it could be the data is not available in any index, search definition, any search definition. You got to write an entire new search definition, then bring that into Kibana, and then make that available for reporting and dashboarding. That, in my opinion, would be more of a red. So it really depends on the use case in that example. The final one, Excel integration. Remember, I've said this multiple times. Kibana is a data visualization tool. This tool is not meant for doing, exports to Excel, dumping large data sets to Excel. If you want to work in Excel, use a tool that's made for Excel, right? Plus, it's not going to be real time in a lot of cases. So I think the Excel integration, I just, while you can take what's on a dashboard, dump it out to Excel, it's just not the right tool. So you've got 6 different tools here, all delivered with PeopleSoft, all available. You don't have to pay anything extra. These are, part of your license. So, when you have a reporting need, look at the tool that meets the purpose there, right? And as customers start to look at, well, I like to see something a little more visual. Well, then you want to start moving towards these analytical tools on the right, pivot grids and Kibana. So let's focus now more on Kibana. All right, Kibana. This is, in my view, and kind of taken from PeopleBooks as well, the end-to-end process flow for Kibana. So you have a query in PeopleSoft. That is what an Elasticsearch index is built from. It's either a query or a connected query, right? So that's steps 1 and 2. Once you have a query, and there are certain rules that have to be met in order to use a query in Elasticsearch, if you have all that in place, you can then go into Search Designer, which is under PeopleTools search framework, and actually build an Elasticsearch index. Or this is the process that has been delivered. There are several hundred delivered indexes between financials and HCM, and even if you add student in there, it's probably 400 or 500. But you build the kind of shell of what you want your data to be in Search Designer and Search Framework, and then you run the admin processes where you actually populate that data, right? So you say, okay, I have a query, it returns me 1,000 rows. Now I need to build a definition in Elasticsearch that I want to use for that data. So I take that, build that definition. Now I need to deploy that and run a process to actually put data into that Elasticsearch definition, right? That's steps 8 through 11. 12 through 13, that's where you say, hey, I have this Elasticsearch index that exists back in PeopleSoft. I want to bring that into Kibana and be able to report off of that. So you create what's called an index pattern. Once you have an index pattern, the green light is on. You can build dashboards, visualizations, whatever you want off of that data set. So that's steps 12 and 13. But at that point, your data or your visualizations, only exist within Kibana. So the final steps you'll need to do is actually make the Kibana visualizations available in PeopleSoft, right? And those are the last steps. So this is actually an entire full day class that I do on Kibana, and basically you walk through this entire process in various different scenarios, but you spend a lot of time in these 2 boxes, right? That's the main part of Kibana, but there's a lot of other things that happen. So if you think back to this slide, and I said end user create, if you're creating something custom brand new, you're looking at all 18 steps here. So that's the key takeaway, I would say, from this end-to-end slide. All right. So now there are different use cases for Kibana, right? So Oracle delivers a lot of delivered dashboards, right? Simply, hey, let's take these delivered dashboards, let's turn them on. Let's see what our end users are. If we view our end users, our customer, what do they want to see with these dashboards? Next, clone and modify delivered dashboards, right? So maybe you have a delivered dashboard and it does some of what you want, but not all of what you want. You might just want to clone that dashboard, make a few modifications to it, and then bring it back into PeopleSoft. You don't have to go through the entire process. That's a little bit more simple. The next one is similar, but utilize delivered elastic indexes and create custom dashboards. So maybe the data that you want exists in Elasticsearch, so it's available, but you don't have a dashboard or visualization that uses that already in a way that you want. You're basically going to create something from scratch utilizing delivered data. The next one, it's kind of each one of these progressively gets more complicated, right? Maybe the next one is you have an Elasticsearch index, but it doesn't have all the data that you want. So at that point, you need to then go back and modify that Elasticsearch definition in PeopleSoft and bring that through all the way to those steps till you can use it in Kibana. So that modification, you're probably going to clone what's there, make whatever changes, additions you want in that index pattern, run the process, and then make it available as a data source to build dashboards in Kibana. The final one, and which is the most complex one, is going to be maybe you have a custom module or just a bunch of custom tables that you want to bring into Kibana to do reporting. At that point, you got to build an index in Kibana, or actually you got to build an Elasticsearch definition in PeopleSoft. So you need to start with a query, build a query, then build the definition, then run the process that populates it, then bring it into Kibana. Finally, you could then build dashboards based on that custom data. So kind of 5 different ways that Kibana is being used by my customers today. All right, so I'm going to kind of take a step and walk through each one of these in a little bit more detail, but I want at the high level go over that. So the first one is delivered dashboards, right? So like I said, there are a lot of delivered dashboards here. On HCM to PUM 43, this is the full list. And for FSCM, PUM 44. Now I think PUM 45 is out, but I don't have those in there if there were any new ones. But what are we looking at here from a delivered perspective? Let me just pull up Kibana, right? So in here, my session expired, but my Kibana session stayed open. So I'm just going to stay here in Kibana anyway, because that's where I want it to be eventually, right? But this is an HCM environment that I use for all of my training courses, right? So these are all of the dashboards that are available in this environment. If I click dashboard.
Because the sound.
Pardon me? All right, these are the dashboards that are delivered. And you can see, I haven't cleaned this up after my previous class. So I have quite a few people that dashboards that were created in the class. But here I could pick any one of these dashboards and open it up. So I'll just pick this. There's a recruiting one here. Which one is it? The recruitment admin dashboard. Oh, I picked the wrong one. Sorry. I knew I should have came from here, so I have the name of it. Right, so the Kibana tile itself, right, I click on recruiting, it's application details, not recruiting. That's the one I wanted, but because I know this one has data. That's the whole reason why I'm pulling this up, right? Anytime you see this little icon, that's how you know it's a Kibana dashboard that's going to be under there, right? So this is just a tile, and basically in PeopleSoft, this will be a link to a interactive dashboard. So when you click on that tile, it loads this, right? Loading Elastic. This is the dashboard, fully interactive dashboard, as you can see. So in my first example, end user, they just want to, customer, these are delivered. You're just using the delivered dashboards. They're coming in, they're going to click on this one. It's going to drill down, add it, right? And they can get to whatever data they want in a delivered dashboard. All right, next, on the FSCM side, we have a lot more, as we have several more as well. So HCM, FSCM, quite a few dashboards, and they continue to add more. Now, my second scenario, I said, well, what if what you want doesn't exist on the dashboard, but it does already exist in an Elasticsearch index? So now you need to go out and look at all the different indexes that, you need to go out and look at all the different indexes that are available. So here, in this case, if you wanted to take one of those delivered dashboards and clone it, we could have done that, right? And just from here, simply, we were in the Kibana one, it's application details. Right. If I wanted to clone this dashboard, I could just be in edit mode and say save as, or from the other one, I could have said clone. I could have come in here, save as a new dashboard, and call this 2, right? And now I can add more visualizations to this dashboard, but I'm not changing the delivered, right? So in this case, that is take the delivered and clone it. But what if, I didn't want to, I didn't have what I needed. Now I need to go out and build something else. Well, what Elasticsearch indexes are available? So in there, you want to go back into PeopleSoft. Well, first of all, you could stay in Kibana and view what's available in here by just looking at your index patterns that are available, right? So anything in here, these are all the index patterns that are available. But even if you didn't have something available from your index patterns already, you could go out into PeopleSoft in Search Framework and see what is available from a index pattern perspective, right? Search definitions. So in here, I'm going to just pick one of these. I'll just pick total comp rewards here. It's deployed, all that. I mean, you can ignore that right now, but if you want to make changes, you have to get through that, right? So from here, you can see where this query comes through. So you could take this definition, clone it, save it, and then build your own definition based on what's out there. That's another use case, right? But so that's, you look at those delivered search indexes, maybe all the data you want already existed in there, you could just build directly from there, right? So a lot of different, and these slides will be available. So that's why I'm just clicking through them. No one's going to look through this. Sometimes you will find certain indexes in here that were built specifically for Kibana and reporting, like down here is one example. GL Journal Search for Kibana, GL Ledger Search for Kibana, built specifically for reporting in Kibana. All right, so one example, the first one I wanted to talk about that we did at the customer was this at Parkview Health. So they had looked at one of the delivered dashboards and said, hey, we like that delivered dashboard, but we want it to be based on AP payments, not receivables. Can we do that, right? So as we went out and we looked and said, oh, okay, well, what exactly are you referring to, right? So everything was based, it was based on vouchers, but they wanted on payment. It wasn't receivables and payables. It was vouchers, right? So instead of it being vouchers, they wanted it on payments. So they liked exactly what was there, but they didn't want, they want to just kind of look slightly different. So we went out, we looked at the search definition, saw what was available in the delivered, and said, you know what, we can build that simply by just looking at what's there, changing the underlying data set, and building something very similar. So that's exactly what we did. A simple case here. And, you know, I left this a little bit simple in the diagram here, but if you look, right, this was the delivered version based on vouchers. And this was, you know, more of the count rather. Well, this one had an amount, right? But so you had counts and amounts and things like that. But we simply used the AP payments delivered search definition. So one way to leverage what already exists. All right. A second example was, and this one gets into a little bit more of a complicated, if you think back to my different scenarios, the scenario that I initially started to talk about was, what if you want to create something from scratch? So they came to me with these SQL statements. There were 4 different SQL statements, and they wanted to build, and I can't remember if we started out as a Envision or I don't even remember what the initial thought was, but then it was, okay, well, can we get all this into a query and then use Kibana, right? So this was sort of what we were thinking. We had this IT labor comparison report. So you had a bunch of hours and then kind of getting into more detail. So kind of came up with a formal idea, but my key went back to, can you get me all this data in a query? And then we could use that as a source for an Elasticsearch index. Okay, so that sounds pretty easy, right? I didn't know the data set and everything they wanted. So, you know, I kind of challenged them, can you get this into a query? And in order to get it exactly how we wanted, rather than building it in query, we said, let's go back and actually do this as a SQL view in App Designer. So in this case, we are introducing a custom object, but that just made it simpler than trying to write, this really complex PS query. So we wrote it as a SQL view, and then we used that SQL view as a source to our PS query, right? So took all this information, got it in there, then use that query. Now, I mentioned earlier, there are certain things when you want to use a query as a source for Elasticsearch, you need to, I know I don't remember them off the top of my head. I just have a list. I check them all, right? But you have to be prompted by some date time. There has to be a drilling URL, the criteria for a date time. Then there also needs to be a public query. So, whatever those things happen, right? So once we built that query with all those requirements, we said, okay, now let's create a custom search definition in Elasticsearch. So spend a lot of time getting that search definition, all the data into Elasticsearch. You make sure that, whatever security needs to be applied gets done there, right? So all that is going to happen in Elasticsearch in your PeopleTools search definition. Once you have that all set and proper, then you deploy that process and then run the crawl process to populate that data into a custom Elasticsearch definition. Once you run the process and you have all the data that you had in your query now existing in your search definition, now you can go into Kibana and say, okay, I have this new Elasticsearch. I want to bring it into Kibana, right? So that's the process of building your index pattern in Kibana, right? So then you do that, then you can begin the process of building custom content within Kibana. So in this case, right, we're able to create really curated dashboards for various different groups within the organization, right? So this first dashboard that we did was built in all these dashboards as I go through these, right? Some of them look more similar than others, but they're all a slight different view. The way we chose to do this is we created different dashboards for different user groups, right? So, the first one was for managers. And in this case, we were providing total hours by category, then our summary by project, and then total hours by, TM by project, right? So you were able to see each one of these team member, then you're able to see each one of these specific for this particular group. So how do we do it for each group? Each dashboard, whenever you put it back and make it available, you assign which role can see that, right? So we just knew that the managers had this role. In this case, finance had a different role. So we then enabled this dashboard for finance. So in this case, again, it's a little slightly different reports, but a dashboard off of a similar date, off that same data set, because we built this robust data set where we could support reporting for all these different visualizations in user groups. On this one, IT labor report, this one was for leaders, right? So this one, actually, I obviously zeroed out the costs and stuff like that, but down here, but we've got, the ability, actually, this was dummy data anyway, but, we were able to add some other information in here. And then I said before, it's not the best to use Kibana for Excel, but there are opportunities to actually get some things out of Excel for Kibana. So, if you come back into here, in this case, and you look down here at the bottom, right? This particular dashboard, we've got this report. So if you wanted to actually download this data, and that was a requirement for that dashboard, we did allow, right? So there are two ways to do it. You can say a formatted export, and then I can open that and they can get, that other spreadsheet was up, is something else that I want to go over with you before this is over. All right, so here, you were able to download the data, and that's kind of the format you get. But again, it's just a dump. That's what they're considering formatted, whereas this raw is going to look probably just more like a CSV. Yeah, so it still looks pretty much the same in that case as the other one, but it is one. Okay, so from there, you know, again, this one was for monthlies with a month-by-month comparison. Maybe we could have combined some of these onto one larger dashboard, but you know, you think about design principles when you're building Kibana. You want to be able to take a look at a dashboard and see kind of an entire picture of you know, whatever the goal or the object is of that dashboard, right? Can you quickly look at that and extract, you know, a bunch of information without having to scroll, without having you know, maybe you want to scroll a little bit, but you know, this, you know, from a dashboarding perspective, as much as you can get on the screen that is, you know, digestible by the end user, that's the best way to do it. Because you could, I don't think there's a limit. I mean, you could put 1,000 different visualizations on a dashboard, but at that point, it'd be hard to then figure out what you're actually trying to get to. I'm gonna pause for 1 second. I don't know when this question came in, 15 minutes ago. Great job, Gary. So there was a question. How much of the setup of the index is technical driven, needing a developer, and how much can be performed by a tech savvy functional user? I'll come back to that in a minute. Let me finish. I think I have one more slide as far as what we did here, and it'll be really quick because it's just another view of the same thing. Actually, well, that was the last slide. Okay, so to answer your question, I would say it depends on how you are. Let me go back. The question that was asked again is how much of the setup of the indexes is technical driven, needing a developer, and how much can be performed by a tech savvy functional user? I would say that, you know, if you can use PS query and write a query, follow the rules that it needs to have, it is not overly technical, but there may be constraints that something you want to do in a query that you're not able to actually do in search framework, and that may then force you to use a SQL view or a different way to get the data into your query. So 90% of the time, or 75% of the time, maybe I'll go with a tech savvy functional user should be able to do the indexes. But what I find more than their ability to do that from a, you know, doing it is their ability to do it from a security perspective, from organization to organization. So many organizations, they lock down what you can do under the PeopleTools umbrella, and you can't actually, you know, you can't actually get to certain functions because they view that maybe as an IT function versus a end user function. All right. Oh man, a lot of questions coming in right now. From Michael, I've heard from other users about having issues getting Elasticsearch and Kibana working with SSL. Did you have any issues with that? And if yes, how was it resolved? Well, I will say we've had some issues, and I'm not the system administrator that does the install. So I've worked with them some, but it hasn't, I feel like as we saw a lot of the issues and challenges happen a lot more in 8.5.8 than in 8.5.9. So that was one thing, but I think both Elasticsearch and Kibana had to be SSL. I mean, that's probably something we could follow up with separately. And, you know, if we have a question, I can maybe get some additional information from, you know, one of my administrators on that one. Next question, Gary, let me find Kibana dashboards. What are the reasons customers are slow to uptake them? I would say slow to uptake the Kibana has been primarily some issues related to what was above with, certificates and issues with browsers in 858. Again, some of those have been resolved as it's come to 859. I think people were maybe intimidated by it. I don't 100% know, but it is a shift. It's a different way of looking at data. So I think there are quite a few customers that I think they want to see it, and the more time they see, it seems like every time I do a presentation on Kibana, the immediate feedback is, can we turn this on tomorrow? Can we do this, right? And then sometimes it just takes a little while for the team to decide who they want to roll it out to. A lot of different really reasons, but I can't pinpoint one as to why it's slow to uptake. Maybe people are afraid of investing too much into a technology because it's a new one, and directionally, where is it going to go? Maybe they already have some third-party reporting tool, OBIE or some analytical tool, and they say, well, why do we need another one? And so they're now weighing, do I do stuff in Kibana or do I do it in another system? But I would say if you're reporting on PeopleSoft, keep it in PeopleSoft and use Kibana. I mean, it's not like you have to go out and license something extra, and Oracle keeps delivering additional content that's available. I see Sashik followed up as well, one of the lead PeopleTool guys, as it relates to Kibana, and he has so he listed out where you can find some information on it. How much practice dev time would you need to get up and running? I mean, define up and running, right? Into production and all of that. It's probably a few weeks, I mean, at the most. But if you want a little bit of, if you're just going to turn on the delivered, you should be able to do that. But you do need a server where you have Elasticsearch installed already. Typically, you'll just install Kibana and Logstash on that same server as well. You probably need to add some resources to that server, because you often you'll see if it's not sized appropriately, you may run into some challenges with performance, right? Because you're now not only using it for searching and getting the data, the indexes there, but the actual processing and rendering of the dashboards as well is all happening on that same server. Jumping back real quick to this slide before I go to any more questions. So there were some challenges that we had at Hackensack, right? So they had a certificate issue in 858, and I think that relates back to that whole SSL thing. We upgraded to 859, and now we're not seeing those issues. Again, I wasn't on their admin team doing that. They actually put it all on hold and then came back and we revisited after their upgrade. So I don't know what all was involved in those fixes to get that. One thing that kind of got me, which was interesting, was, we put on hold going to production with the 858 dashboards when we first built them, and we upgraded the environment. And it didn't even dawn on me that, gosh, why do these dashboards not work in 859? It was because they didn't get upgraded. So the process to upgrade between 858 and 859 needed to run to upgrade what was in our database. That didn't happen because I took what was dev, tried to bring it to their new dev, and we had an issue. So we ended up having to recreate a bunch of the indexes and information, and that's because it wasn't in production, it didn't make it through the upgrade path. But so I 100% can't say, oh, well, if it's in production, you upgraded custom work, it's all going to come through. But based on, conversations with the support team, that's the way, it should work. They wanted to use some functionality that didn't seem to be available, I guess. And one of them was drilling down to other dashboards. And I know there's a little bit of that can be done, but what they were doing a little bit more complex, drilling down from one dashboard to another. They would have liked to have done region maps with drill downs on multiple layers. Again, like, so say if you were to drill map of the world, and then you click on the US and it zooms in, then you click again and you could drill to the state and maybe to a county or zip code. That multi-layer drill down on a map was not something that is working with Kibana for PeopleSoft. So I don't know, in future releases, hopefully that is something that gets discussed and we work towards, and glad to see that Sashink's on the call here, so he can take that back to the team. And then the other one was the coordinate map. So coordinate map is, using geospatial points, and that's one of the 18 visualizations that is available in Kibana, but that does not work in PeopleSoft because the type of coordinate that you need for or the type of field that you actually need for a coordinate map is not something that's available in PeopleSoft. So it's a specific field type. And so I thought I was going to outsmart the system and figure out a way to take a field, move it into what's called a scripted field. It's like a custom field in Kibana. And I was going to try to just create a field of a different type, but the field still wasn't available. So I don't think you can use the coordinate map in PeopleSoft. And then they wanted to do some other hiding of filters and controls, but some of that functionality I think is really important to leave on screen. But I think people get used to other reporting tools. And if you've worked for years with Cognos or even Tableau or OBIE, right, there's functionality that each tool has and you've become accustomed to. You may want to then bring that into the Kibana space. Some of it will port, some of it won't, right? It's just, and vice versa, right, between all those tools. So it's not just, a Kibana thing. It's, just a difference between each tool. All right, so how do you move forward with analytics in PeopleSoft? Well, this is one of the things as an organization you might want to look at, right? So start with kind of an inventory of, all your reports, right? And what you're doing, how people are doing. Maybe look at, what reports are troubling, what takes a long time. Where do we run into a lot of problems, right? Come up with that list and then say, well, maybe are we using the right tool, right? Think back to my slide of all the different tools, right? Are we using the right tool to do what we want? Next, rationalize your reporting requirements. So take, that entire list and, do you need all 3,000 reports that you have? Maybe you could, bring that down, right? And how do you bring that down? Well, if you have a dashboard or some interactive tool that allows you to basically take what you were doing with 50 different reports, and now you're meeting all 50 of those requirements with one dashboard, that's an opportunity to really, funnel down what you've created already, create something that's, much more and user friendly. Next, take a look at, what's delivered. Can you use what's delivered? Do we need to have something custom, right? So leverage what's out there too. And I talked about that earlier. How do you take what's delivered, modify just a little bit, and then move forward? And then finally, iterative design and build, right? So especially organizations that are not as far along in the analytical maturity, if for lack of a better term, right? So you build something, it works great today. Your users really like that. That's, it's not the final version, right? There's going to be time you might want to bring more data into that, make more options available, right? So always view it as an ongoing design and build process. So what do you need to do to make this happen, right? Your strategic roadmap. If you're not on 858, you need to be on a minimum of 858. Familiarize yourself with Elasticsearch, the indexes, how do you build them, right? So I talked quite a bit about that. So all the data in PeopleSoft or in Kibana, it comes from Elasticsearch. So if you don't have a handle on especially when it comes to custom stuff, right? I mean, if you're just using what's delivered, that's easy because it's already there. You don't have to know that much about Elasticsearch. But if you want to do custom Kibana data sources, then you need to be familiar with Elasticsearch. Leverage the delivered content. So stay current, get current, because they're going to deliver not only delivered dashboards, they're also going to bring delivered indexes as well, right? So they may not have what you want on a dashboard, but the data may be available in an index. So that comes either stay current, get current, and you could even do some selective adoption to bring certain pieces in. Finally, partner with an expert, right? Training, consulting. There's an email address there that I heard that guy's really good. So definitely, an area that we specialize in at SpearMC is Kibana. So a little plug there for me. All right. One thing, sorry, I got to the end there and we'll see if we have any questions, but one of the things I did want to splash up here is I talked a lot about all these different delivered index patterns as well as dashboards, right? So I have this spreadsheet that I put together, and if anybody's interested in this, feel free to email me and I will send it to you. But it basically, by each module, lists the dashboard and visualizations that are available, right? So if in this case, if I just want to look at what's available for core HR, I can see that in core HR, they released a bunch of stuff in PUM 34. Another way to do this, right? You turn it all on, but maybe you want to see what's available. I'm only on PUM 40, right? So I'll turn those off and I can see this is what's available up to PUM 40, right? And so I have the same spreadsheet on the financial side as well. Now these columns on here, right? So you've got the module that it comes from, the dashboard, the index pattern, right? So the index pattern, that's the Elasticsearch index where the data is actually coming from. So again, if anybody is interested in seeing this, please let me know. So Sasha just asked, Gary, how do you keep this spreadsheet up to date? Well, I'm relying on the images that come out, but what happens, when the videos come out, as far as, the release notes, or I don't know what I can't remember the actual term of your PUM highlight video. So when those come out, new PUM image comes out, I go out, watch that and see what what Kibana content came out in that. And then I go into our database, our demo database that has that latest PUM applied and see what's available. And then I bring it into this spreadsheet. And then I just take what it was, which PUM image those came in from. All right. Any other questions from anyone? I think I got about 10 minutes left. I kind of went a little quick, took some questions earlier, and then thinking we were taking questions at the end, and probably took the 10 minutes throughout. So I may have went a little quicker, but I'd love to, any other questions anybody wants to ask. All right, so it looks like a similar spreadsheet is available in PeopleBooks. So there you go. Anyone else? I appreciate everyone taking the time today. I hope you found this, well, thank you. Nice presentation. I hope you found this useful. I spent a lot of time in this area, and I love seeing a big audience here today as well. So Mike's asking, is it preferable to keep index data to say 3 years instead of the whole universe? I would say it is it's probably based on your reporting need. I mean, and depending on the size of the data set. I mean, yes, that is possible. I'm not going to say no, but one of the things that Kibana is pretty good with is large sets of data. But that said, large could be relative to what we're talking about, right? I think so I don't have a 100% answer. I think as long as it's performing well, then it may not matter, right? But if your reporting requirement needs all that data and history, then maybe You do need that, or maybe you do create two versions of it, right? One that you might use for the majority of your dashboards, and then if you need something that drills down with full history, then maybe you could include a larger data set, but maybe use it less frequently. Okay, and I've been answering all the questions in the chat that was from the conference. So, okay, Mike, I see your question in there now. It looks like all these same questions got put into there. So very good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. And again, feel free to reach out if anyone has any questions. Enjoy the rest of the conference.